Which of those three options seem most reasonable to you?
I couldn't really pick an answer, you know.
Right.
To give you my perspective on things.
Yes.
Like there's a lot of religions, and I try to understand all of them, you know.
Yes.
And so there's various different answers to all of these questions, and I don't think any answer is sort of clear cut.
Okay.
And so I'm not necessarily sure what I would answer in this hypothetical situation that you've just described, but to pedal back to the questions you've asked me earlier, is I personally believe wholeheartedly that the reason why we're here is just in essence to have fun. Okay. And I don't mean that in a hedonistic way, you know. I mean a very bad example of just having fun would be the hedonism of the 60s revolution, you know, where you've just had people who just took drugs, drank a lot of alcohol, made love to everyone. I see that as a generation that didn't really understand the importance of responsibility, you know. And so I think that we are bound and limited, and we have all of these limitations and these rules that we have to adhere to go through life morally, you know, in a good way to cause the least disturbance and harm to all of our surroundings. But I think that in essence it's really the point of us to be here and have fun, you know.
I get what you're saying. I've heard
love one another.
Right. But let's go one step back before we ask the question, why are we here? The other question that I kind of asked you was, how do we get here?
Right.
I'll take your question on board in the next kind of segment, if you like, right? But here, how do we get here? Going back to the ball example, right? You have three possible logically disjunctive options. You have, in this logical disjunction, you have 1, 2, 3 options. Either the ball came as a result of self-creation, and we know self-creation is not possible because it means that something will have to exist and not exist at the same time, right? So like your mother giving birth to herself, is that something which is possible? No, because then that would mean that she has to exist and not exist at the same time. In the same way, right, the ball giving rise to itself is impossible because it's a contradiction in terms. It can't exist and not exist at the same time.
I've studied a lot of Eastern philosophy,
right?
And they offer another explanation for this, which is also something which is very interesting.
Okay.
Is I don't know the word in English, but there's these great myths of, say, the Egyptian religions where the ultimate god, in a sense, how the universe was created was by self-impregnation, and that's usually symbolically female god. And so I'm not sure where you are coming from. I'm just trying to understand all of these stories, you know.
Yeah, those things are all there. It's not even an Eastern tradition. I mean, what do you call it? Gilgamesh and all.
No. Right. So the Eastern thing,
the Egyptian thing you're talking about.
Yeah.
Is I can't remember the name of the god, but I don't.
Me neither.
Is it Ra? Is it Ra? Is it not? But it's one of those gods. I'm not an ancient Egyptian specialist. Impregnates the other one, and therefore you had the heaven and the earth. But there you still had the coexistence of two things at the same time.
Yeah.
Even in that myth. The point is, on logical principles, it's not possible to have something that exists and doesn't exist at the same time. You see what I mean? So if I say I exist but I don't exist, are you here? Or if I say, look, I'm going to send you a text message, all right? There. Or I'm going to tell you something, and you say, "What's that, Mohammad? What are you going to tell me?" I'm going to tell you, "Look, I'm not here." What do you say about that?
Objectively speaking, you are here.
Oh, right. So it's a contradiction in terms. You can't exist and not exist at the same time, right? We accept.
Yeah.
So that now we have the disjunction. And we took out one option, which is that the ball can't create itself. Now we go to the other two options. Either the ball was there eternally, or it was created by some other thing.
Yes.
In either event, the question would be, does the ball depend upon something or not? Because both of those options are logically valid options. Either the ball was always there, or the ball was put into place by something else. But in either event, the ball would have to be either dependent upon itself or dependent upon something else for its continued existence. If you say that that ball is dependent upon something else because of its continued existence, then the question is, what is that other thing?
Well, so what you see a lot in Abrahamic religions is when the notion of the creation of the universe is essentially a sort of the universe conceptualized as God being some sort of mechanic or engineer. Like he created the universe. As soon as you create something, it's essentially an assembly of parts.
Right.
So something from the outside that
Yes.
puts it together.
Okay.
What I find very interesting in Eastern philosophy, say Taoism, which is what the Chinese people believe in. That's the yin yang symbol, right? They see the universe and the creation of the universe not necessarily as something that has been created, but something which grows. And so there's this dichotomy that you can make them between an organic take on the universe and a mechanic take on the universe. And so something that is constructed or something that grows of itself. And so a counter argument to what you're saying is could be, I'm not saying it is because I don't know, right? Is that the universe is actually maybe closer resembled by the symbology of say a flower. It's like you have a little seed. You're like, how is the seed going to do whatever? But it has the potential to rise.
So this is interesting because it's quite similar to what Richard Dawkins, although his book is not really.
I'm not a big fan of Dawkins.
I'm not a big fan of it. Look, I mean, of his book as well, it's got 300 pages or something. If you look at actually the arguments, it's probably like 20 or 30 pages. Yeah. The arguments against God. One of the things that he says is that the universe. Literally, he uses the term has bylaws. So the laws of the universe could be the bylaws of a conglomerate of universes, which are the multiverse, right? And that there are bigger universes. And what he says is, and where it connects with what you're saying, is that he says that this universe or universes which survive, and he uses biological terminology here, evolutionary terminology. He says universes which survive are ultimately the ones which we get to know about and so on. So in other words, he anthropomorphizes the universe, right? Or you could say actually he personifies the universe in a sense, right? He personifies the universe in the sense that he gives it the characteristics of living things. So if the universe now, in order to be understood by people, has to be personified, that's a question. Why do we have to personify the universe? Now, if you think about it, number one, on naturalism, there is absolutely no evidence whatsoever that non-living things, yes, have an ability to evolve, or that they have that kind of flower example that you gave, which, by the way, a flower is a living thing, right? So going back to biology, it has no propensity to develop in and of itself or so on. But what's more interesting is that the naturalist has resorted, right, to using attributes of human beings in order to make sense of the universe. And what strikes me about that is that those attributes of human being are also coextensive with the attributes of the Abrahamic God. For instance, the ability to grow something, the ability to develop something, the maintainer, the sustainer, and so on. So in other words, what the naturalist has to do is, in the case of Dawkins, or what the Eastern traditionists have to do, is that they have to give the universe the attributes of the God of Abraham, which obviously in this case is something that they kind of counter their theory on. Does that make sense?
I understand what you're saying, but I honestly do not believe you can reduce say Taoism down to naturalism.
No, Taoism. I'm not saying that's naturalism. I was talking about Dawkins. What I'm saying about that is that the universe is personified. It's given attributes which, from an Abrahamic religion perspective, belong to the attributes of God. Now, those attributes are seen as necessary in both Abrahamic religions and on Taoism, say, or Eastern traditions, in order for the universe to be explained.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
So
that's
perfect. That's the core essence of, of making things understandable.
Yes.
Yeah.
So now we have to ask the question: what are Why is it, in fact, that we have to refer to such attributes? Right? So why do we have to refer to the maintenance of the universe? Why do we have to explain the universe in conjunction with maintenance, sustenance, development, and so on? And how can we do so without ascribing the ability of the universe to do those things with an entity that's transcendent or extraneous to that universe, which is able to endow the universe with such ability to be maintained and sustained and so on? So in other words, what is it about these attributes